Hey guys, it's Tiffany, and this is my review for Night School. And what Night School is essentially about is we center on the character of Teddy, and basically he is a high school dropout, and he seems to have a really good life going on. You know, he's got this fiance, and he is trying to get this really good job, but he needs a GED to do so, so he decides to go to night school in order to get this GED, and unbeknownst to his fiance, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Night School overall, I was very conflicted with how to feel about this film. I really do love Kevin Hart. Tiffany Haddish is an actress that has steadily been impressing me. She has been declining a little bit lately, but these are two actors that I do really enjoy a lot, so I should be really excited for it, and especially coupled with Malcolm D. Lee's directing, who I think has been fairly consistent lately, so I should have been really excited for this film, but the film itself looked fairly average, and unfortunately, Night School is really not too good at all. In fact, it's pretty bad. It's a very tonally inconsistent comedy that really does have a lot of problems, but we're just getting into it right now, starting off with the cast. Now, I will say, there are a lot of problems with this movie, but for the most part, the cast is not one of them, and I will say this right now, Kevin Hart does somewhat save this movie. I do think he did a good job in this role. Is he playing a role that does fall into similar traps that his other characters have? Sure, he is, but the character of Teddy is a little bit more serious compared to some of the others. Like I said, this is someone who, he's kind of dropped out of high school, and you can see that he really wants to succeed here, and he's clearly got some sort of learning disability, and I did like getting into that, and again, Hart did do a good job in this film, and even parts of this film where it's really not working at all, Hart still manages to make this role work, even if, in general, I think this character is kind of all over the place, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but I do think he did a good job here. You know, sure, he does the whole screaming thing, and people make fun of his height and things like that, but he did do a good job of, keeping this character just a little bit different from some of the others he's played, and I will definitely give him credit for that. However, surprisingly, he's not the best performance in this movie. The best performance, without a doubt, is actually Tiffany Haddish as the character of Carrie, who I really loved her in this movie. From the trailers, I thought she was just going to be the loudmouth who was really annoying. She's actually heavily toned down. Sure, she does have some moments where she's freaking out and things like that, but for the most part, this is a very strict teacher who is very by the book, but also really does care about her students, and by far the best thing about this movie is the chemistry between these two. Anytime these two are on screen, you really are into it. They really do work very well together, and I really would love to see them work in a film again, because I actually did think they had really good chemistry here, and I'm hoping that they can somehow reunite in a better film. Look, again, I've not been the biggest fan of Tiffany Haddish, but I'm glad to see that this is a different type of role for her, and I think if she continues to do stuff like this, then she's really going to impress me as an actress, because I did actually think she was quite good here. The rest of the cast, on the other hand, is kind of 50-50 for me. I will say Rob Riggle is fine in this film. This is the first film this year where he isn't going all out with his characters. He's not giving an Oscar-worthy performance like he did in the amazing film Midnight Sun or even Status Update. It's a fine role overall. The Night School crew, some of them are good, some of them are really bad. The worst offense, easily, is this middle-aged woman whose name I'm just blanking on right now, but she is this basically the stay-at-home mom who basically seems to say the most inappropriate things at the worst times. She gives way too much detail. She's always freaking out, and I really couldn't stand her, but she's not the worst part of this movie. The worst act in this movie, without a doubt, is Taran Killam as the principal of the school. Holy shit, this guy was bad. Look, I don't know how good this guy is on SNL. I heard his ABC show is pretty good, but this was so bad. He's basically playing that, like, rival to Kevin Hart, who Kevin Hart, I guess, picked on in school, and he's very much out for revenge. He hasn't let that go. He likes to carry this bat around to intimidate his students, and yes, he does do that black voice thing, and it is extremely annoying. I really did not like this character at all, and even when this character does start to take a shift, it really does not work at all. Like I said, the cast here for the most part is fine. Megalyn, Echikunwoke, I actually really did like here as well, but for the most part, besides Hart and Haddish, everyone else were just kind of fine here. So now let's get to the directing and the writing, because surprisingly, that's where I really think this film falters. And again, it sucks because this isn't like it's from a director that is incompetent. It's not like it's a director that isn't capable of handling this type of film. This is Malcolm D. Lee, who, did Girls Trip, who to me is one of the well-paced comedies of the entire decade. He did such a great job with that film of being able to switch gears from comedy to drama in an instant. This film, on the other hand, it doesn't seem to know how to do that. And it's mainly because it is way too focused on the comedy, and the comedy here largely, for me at least, did not succeed at all. I found the comedy to be extremely annoying, very unfunny, very repetitive. The jokes, sometimes some of them are good, but it really is all over the place with its humor. Sometimes the humor is kind of clever, but then sometimes it's like really gross, and again, the film just relies way too much on it, and anytime the film tries to get serious, I did think it worked. I did actually like the moments the film tried to get serious, but it just immediately reverted back to its really dumb comedy, which, like I said, really is not working. It's one of those films where they just don't know when to quit with certain jokes, and largely most of them are not very good. Largely most of them are very forgettable, and it sucks. I mean, again, this is Malcolm D. Lee, and yeah, this is very much disappointing because I thought, again, Girls Trip was so well paced, and then in comparison, it feels like a completely different director. I don't really know what happened here, and that really does surprise me overall. However, I think the biggest problem with this movie is the writing. The writing to this movie is an absolute mess, and maybe it's because of the fact that there's like 5 writers on this thing, which is insane. I mean, Stoller's one of them, Kevin Hart's one of them, so there's all kinds of different tones going on. The film is extremely tonally inconsistent, and to me, I think this film would have worked a lot better if it was a dramedy, because like I said, the character of Teddy is really not a bad one. This is someone who, he clearly had some problems in high school. He does seem to have some sort of learning disability. If you've watched the trailer, you basically find that out. But you don't find that out into this movie until, like, I want to say, like, the end of the second act. Like, that's how long it takes to get the reveal that he actually does have dyslexia, and the film does do a good job of setting that up. They have all these, they have all these, like, random letters and numbers, like, scattered all over the place, and in his head, he's trying to solve them, but it's just not working out, and I did think that was cool the way they set that up, but again, the film is not really focused on its story. It's really only focused on that comedy, and it really doesn't work, and also, there's way too much going on in this film. The film doesn't really seem to know what kind of story it wants to tell, and especially when it comes to Kevin Hart and his fiance, because I think this could have been a really good story had it actually made some sense, because throughout the whole movie, Kevin Hart is lying to his fiance about going to night school. He's not telling her about it. He's telling her that he got this really successful job, and the only reason this is here is to create conflict. It would be one thing if he's pretending to be this, like, really smart guy who, like, went to, like, say, Harvard or something, and he has this really great job, and he's trying to put on this facade that he is this, ostensibly intelligent figure. But that's not what's going on in this movie. Megalyn Echikunwoke, she can tell who he really is. I mean, he's screwing up in front of her. There's a lot of really dumb things he does. So the fact that he's lying to her, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. I never really understood, like, why he had to be lying to her about this. And it goes exactly the way you think it's going to. And it's ridiculous. I really hated this storyline. And I think it was very unnecessary overall. But the other big problem with Night School is most of the characters here. The film is very Teddy-centric, and like I said, there are some really good scenes between him and Carrie. One in particular that I was like, oh wow, this is actually really good. It involves the scene where we actually see that Carrie does care about her students, and she really does want him to succeed, and sure, she can be a hard ass, but she really does want him to do well. This is immediately ruined by this very long 5-minute montage of her trying to whip him into shape, them like fighting in that ring, and it just doesn't work at all, especially like I said, when it just seems so genuine. It seemed like Carrie actually really wanted to help him out, and again, the film does not know when to be serious and when to be funny. Anytime it's serious, it's usually immediately followed by comedy, and it just did not really work for me. And that's the same with the Night School crew overall, because these guys, forget about them. They are the most one-note characters you could possibly think of. Rob Riggle is basically just this sort of lame guy who is always freaking out over everything. Then you have this middle-aged mom, like I said, who I really couldn't stand at all. I thought she was extremely annoying. Then you have this other character who he assumes that the basically like aliens are real and that like robots are real and things like that, and that technology's coming after us. You have this other character that's in jail. You have this girl who's kind of promiscuous in school there, but that's really all they are. Other than those small things, that's really all these characters are. And for me, I was really disappointed because I did see a lot of potential with these characters. I saw ways that they could have fleshed them out, but again, they're just very much archetypes, and that really did disappoint me overall, and especially when it comes to that really annoying middle-aged woman I'm talking about, because they do actually make an attempt to possibly flesh her out and maybe try to change her as a character, but again, that's still ruined by this really awful comedy, which really was not working for me at all. And again, I just could not stand a lot of it. There are some alright jokes here and there, but most of it really did not work for me at all. And also when that goes to the Taran, Killam, and Kevin Hart rivalry. This could have been another really strong part of the film where these two are constantly butting heads, and you could tell that Taran Killam, you know, he really does have something against Hart, and again, the problem with the movie is that he is playing someone who is in a completely different movie. You know, like I said, Killam is so over the top. He is like a cartoon at points, and you just don't care about this rivalry at all. You know, you don't really care that he has something out for Kevin Hart. You don't really care that Hart obviously kind of ruins some of Killiam's high school life. You just don't really care about this overall. And again, it's one of the 5 plot points in this movie that just doesn't really go anywhere all that interesting. And while it does go the way you think it's pretty much going to go, it really does not work, again, solely because of the fact that Killam is, one, not just not working in this role at all and feels like he's in a completely different movie, but 2, it doesn't take itself seriously, and it's very half-baked, just like pretty much everything else in this film. The cinematography is fine here, I guess. You know, it looks fine for a comedy. Again, like I will say, I did think they did that really cool thing with the letters and the numbers. I thought that was a really cool effect overall. We did get a good job of going into his head. There's also this cool thing where throughout the movie, he constantly hears Carrie's head in his voice, telling him that, you know, you got this, you can do better. And I thought that was actually pretty effective as well, and I think that could have been really cool, again, if they took that a little more seriously. The score was fine, I guess. And the editing. This movie is horribly paced. There is this one sequence in particular that takes place in this classroom. It's all the night school crew. They're trying to do something in the principal's office, and oh my god, this scene literally would not end. It just kept going on and on. And look, I don't usually get too bored during scenes like this, but this scene literally felt like 20 minutes. It honestly might be a contender for one of the worst sequences of the entire year. It kept going on and on and on. It got more increasingly unfunnier as it went on, and I could not stand this sequence at all. And there are a lot of sequences in here that are like that. There are so many points points in this movie where I'm like, okay, we're starting to wrap up here. Okay, we're starting to get to the end. And then something happens just to drag the story out more. And this film is just way too long. It's almost 2 hours long, and you really do feel that length throughout the whole thing. And I think regardless if you like this movie or not, you're gonna feel that length. There are a lot of comedies that are unnecessarily long, but this is probably one of the slow-paced and draggiest comedies I have seen in quite a long time. Night School in general, it just is very disappointing. There's a lot of things there I think that could have made a really good film, but just in general, this really did disappoint me overall. Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish do work good together. You know, some of the supporting cast, they do work well here. There are some good jokes here and there, and like I said, there were some moments I thought were genuinely interesting, but just overall, this is a film that goes into very similar traps that most comedies do. It doesn't seem to know when to work. It doesn't seem to know when to be tonally inconsistent. And again, this would not be a problem for me if we didn't have things like, say, Blockers earlier this year, which did such a good job of having that really silly, over-the-top comedy, but also really zeroing in on its characters and taking itself seriously and seeing their, you know, complexities. And this film could have done that, but it decides not to. It decides to keep it very surface level and just very basic, and I think that does really hurt this film overall. Night School overall was very disappointing. It really does break Malcolm D. Lee's sort of streak that he was on for a while, and I am unfortunately going to give Night School overall a D+. Look, this isn't as bad as most bad comedies that are out there, because again, it does have its heart in the right place, and I definitely will give it that, but just overall, this film really did not do it for me at all. It's extremely disposable. It's a very, very messy film that I think really could have been a lot better, but that's really it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you guys saw this movie overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.